All right, welcome back to the Sideline Report. I'm Marvin Jackson along with Mike Richman and Donna Hopkins. And you just heard Keenan Robinson talking about the coaching situation, the defensive coordinator. And he's saying he'll go with whatever the Washington organization goes with. And of course, we know now that Jim Haslett is out as defensive coordinator. And
he pretty much had to do that. I mean, because whoever comes in, that's who you got to go with. And you saw that probably coming on down the pike as far as the way this defense has played this year. And even looking back at last year, they were going to make a change one way or the other. And they may not be done with that yet as far as the other coaching staff. They said that they're going to assess everybody as far as in the organization of how they run things, how they operate. But that's one area of this team defensively that needed to improve, because when you look at the stats, when you look at this team as a whole on defense, it was pretty bad this year.
Yeah, I don't understand from the very beginning when Haslett came in 2010 why he switched to the 3-4 defense. First of all, the Redskins were well suited to the 4-3 at the time. They had, during the Gibbs era, then Zorn, they had some pretty stingy defenses. In 2008, they were 4th in the league as a 4-3 unit. Then he switches them to the 3-4. I don't think they had the personnel to succeed in the 3-4. You need fast linebackers. They've never really had that.
Pass
rushers, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Kerrigan could be that guy, 13.5 sacks this year, but Arakpo certainly hasn't panned out. A great nose tackle.
They've
never had that.
And they still don't.
Barry Cofield really isn't that guy.
Yeah.
Now, Bowen is nice. Well, since he's been back, they improved a little bit. But the reason, Mike, that he switched to that 3-4 is because that's what he ran. Wherever he was before is that 3-4 is what he ran, so he was more comfortable with that, whether they had that or not. But I don't think they have the personnel presently to run a 3-4 or 4-3 defense, so they really have to get some key people in here. Nose tackle, if they're going to run that 3-4.
I like Chris Baker, though.
Yeah, but he has to really play a little more nastier. They've got to really be more aggressive, that type of nasty, but they don't have the people in the secondary to run that 4-3 because you have to have good corners, and they don't, like you said, the linebackers to run the 3-4 or the people up front, the pass rush. So really, when you look at them, they don't have the personnel to run either one. So when they draft this year, they're going to have to look at that defense and that secondary especially.
So will they bring in a defensive coordinator who will run a 4-3 or a 3-4?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean,
Bruce Allen thing, right? He's got to decide on that.
Right. I mean, they have to decide on the personnel that they're going to use for that unit. Let's look at the players right now in terms of the real keepers. Okay. I would say there's only 3 or 4. Okay. I mean, Kerrigan, Bashar Breeland, who was a wonderful draft pick.
I like Trent Murphy, too.
Trent Murphy, yes.
Trent Murphy will be back.
I think he's got potential.
Yeah.
Very
Keenan
good
Robinson.
Right.
And Chris Baker, I think, is a solid player. Everyone else is expendable, really.
Right.
But, I mean, they can't get rid of everyone at one time. But there are so many holes to fill in that defense. But the type of personnel that they bring in, I think, is going to dictate the type of defense that they run, and vice versa.
If you were a defensive coordinator coming in, what would you do first with that defense?
Definitely they need safeties.
Okay.
I mean, safeties, up front, I think that they could get away with some things up front because they do have, some bodies up there that can get the job done. But when you look at the secondary, which was the area that they most needed help, is that safety and the cornerback, because you don't know D'Angelo Hall's status as far as him coming back and where he would be. And Ryan Clark will probably be gone. But hey, how about a Rex Ryan? Even though he may have not been a good head coach, he's a good defensive
coordinator.
Yeah.
I think he's too big a name to bring in as a defensive coordinator right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. In terms of Trent Murphy, your point's well taken. If he can be the type of guy on the edge to complement Kerrigan, I don't think they'd have to bring in another edge rusher, but that I think would really, it would make that defense a lot more dominant than it. I mean, it's not dominant at all right now, but they'd be headed in that direction. They need to put a lot more pressure on the quarterback. I can't remember the last time they were a great team in terms of sacks.
Exactly.
But I also agree that the defensive backfield needs a lot of help. D'Angelo Hall, we don't know what his status is going to be. Amerson, he just had a horrible season this year.
Took 3 steps back.
Right.
Is that the biggest concern, the defense over offense?
I've long stressed they need to solidify that offensive line. And I think it goes to Griffin. Griffin is the future of that franchise. They've invested so much in him. You want to get the most out of him. For him to be a good to really good NFL quarterback, he needs a wall in front of him. He needs 5 blocks of granite from tackle to tackle. Okay, and that's what they've got to build on that offensive line. Who would you keep right now? Who's your guy? Trent Williams, obviously. Maybe Corey Lichtensteiger. Everyone else is
Everybody else.
questionable.
See, I disagree with him a little bit as far as I agree with the fact that you have to solidify that
You're allowed
offense.
to disagree with me.
Yeah, that you have to solidify that line. I agree 100% right there. But I don't think that necessarily makes Robert Griffin a good quarterback, because I think that he has to fine-tune his craft as far as reading defenses, as far as getting rid of the ball a little quicker, because you can have the best offensive line, and if you don't get rid of that ball quick, guess what? You're still going to get sacked.
And how to move in the pocket.
But it has to be like Dallas. I hate to bring them up. But guess what? They build this team around building that offensive line and that defensive line, and then they worked on the other areas. And look at them right now. They've got one of the best offensive lines in football, but it starts with the line play, and then it trickles out to the other areas.
Well, along those lines, though, and this is, Romo versus the offensive line. In recent years, he's choked in December. And a lot of people have blamed it on the weak offensive line.
Right.
He hasn't had the protection that he's needed when it's come to crunch time. Now he's got the line, and look where he is. I mean, his passer rating for December, I think it's like a 133 passer rating.
It's
out of this world.
That's
it's
because
just gonna be in January.
you know why he's improved too.
And best passer rating on the season throughout the NFL.
But you know why they improved too? Because they ran the ball almost the
With DeMarco Murray,
99% of the time versus taking the ball out of Romo's hands. They ran that ball, meaning that still they had a good offensive line for them to do that. But they run the ball, which the Redskins went away from that for the majority of the first half of the season. They did not run the ball. That's their strength.
Well, Mike, I think you did an analysis of the Redskins now and the Redskins
Hey, Mike,
before.
pull out the notes.
I got the notes right here.
We got about a minute. Can you talk about that?
Okay, we are right now in what I would call a miserable period in Redskins history. It's comparable to the period that took place after World War II. It was a quarter century after World War II. The Redskins 119, 185, and 5. They won. Their winning percentage was .393. Had only 4 winning seasons during that era. No playoff appearances and 10 coaches. Now look at the comparison. 22 seasons since Gibbs left for the first time after the 92 year. They have a .411 winning percentage, very close to that other period. 4 playoff seasons. There's more playoff opportunities, obviously. Been in 6 playoff games, 2-6 on that. They've also been through 8 coaches. The revolving coaching door is there. And get this, 24 quarterbacks since their last franchise quarterback in Joe Theismann. You're not going to win consistently with 24 different quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, Mark Rippon he came the closest to that. All these different coaches
and quarterbacks.
Worst mistake, probably the Snyder era next to Marty Schottenheimer, I think, was alienating Brad Johnson. He could have been there for several years. Then what happens? He goes and wins a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay.
Right.
We can name a lot of those
Since we're talking about
players.
quarterbacks, let's talk about this situation in Washington. We've got Griffin coming back, maybe. Cousins coming back, maybe. And we're not even talking about Colt McCoy. Which one of those guys will be back here next year? Because I believe there's only going to be one of them back. What do you guys
That's
think?
an interesting assessment. I think they're both going to be back, and I think it's going to be a quarterback competition.
Okay.
I really think that. I think Gruden is going to make both of them compete for it in OTAs, training camp, whatever.
A real competition.
A real competition.
Yeah.
You can't just gift wrap the job for Griffin anymore.
Yeah.
He's got to earn it. Okay. First of all, he needs to come back. Okay. Like I said earlier, face of the franchise. They invested so much in him. You can't just trade him right now. What are you going to get for him? A 4th or 5th round draft pick?
Nothing much.
They're not going to get much for him. You can't let him go into the season either without doing something to his contract, maybe like restructuring it to extend his deal for 1 year, but not at $16 million for 1 year. Because I'll tell you this, he can't go into the 2015 season as a lame duck quarterback. Okay.
Mike,
one thing before
remember
Donna.
now, there was no love affair between Griffin and Gruden this past season.
You know what? I would not touch his contract because he hasn't proven that I should be negotiating his contract, because I don't know if he can do the job right now. He showed some spurts in whatever certain situations that he got some things done, but really the way that they want him to operate as a quarterback, he has not shown that. They don't have the luxury of not sticking with all the quarterbacks right now. I thought this year that they should have come in as a competition. Every other position is a competition. Why couldn't your quarterback? I don't know. I don't care if they invested this. Cleveland did the good thing this year, and I look at them. Johnny Football came in and was projected. They was almost making him be the starting quarterback. Russell Wilson, when he came in, he was supposed to be the backup. The other guy, guess what? They outplayed these guys, and then they ended up being the quarterback, starting quarterback. The same thing should be happening here. If you start negotiating where you work out a deal like Mike said, then, okay, your confidence is if you come and do the job this year, maybe during the course of the season, we'll talk about negotiating your contract and working on it, but not at the beginning when you haven't proven that you're really going to be the quarterback of this team, because I don't think that any quarterback right now has proven that they should have the starting. I mean, Kirk Cousins had the opportunity, but guess what? He didn't take advantage of it. Colt McCoy had the opportunity. Well, he got hurt. But still, nobody has proven that they have taken this.
But they have to make a decision of some type by this May. It needs to be pointed out, he's going to be a free agent after the 2015 season. That needs to be emphasized. Yeah. So that's why I was saying,
that decision has to be made in May.
I don't think you can have a cloud over him heading into this coming season. And I don't mean giving him a promotion in terms of his contract. I mean restructuring that contract because he would get a one-year extension for $16 million. That's what's called for in his contract. You can't pay him $16 million for 1 year. Okay.
I'm not even thinking about the contract still, Mike. I'm going into the season to say, if you do your job, then when I see that this possibly is the way we should go because you have worked that, then I'm going to negotiate the contract.
All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap up this segment, and we're going to come back and talk about the NFL playoffs. All right. So don't go away. More with Donna and Mike when we return.